If everything goes well, I think we should be live. And welcome to another wonderful episode of Everything Outside Code. Today, I'm super excited. I'm going to be talking to D. Colby. How you
P.
doing
Colby.
today, Colby?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's sunny here in Oslo, so yeah, it's
It's amazing.
6 p.m.
Man,
Amazing.
I miss being in Norway. That was one of the best trips that I have taken. So one day I hope to get back there.
Yeah, come back anytime. Just say the word, and
Do you have
we'll
a
make
couch
it
waiting for
happen.
me?
Yeah, you just see. You'll be surprised. You'll surprise us waiting for you here. But to anyone out there listening, this is another episode where we talk about I think what some people would like to call the boring bits of software engineering, which isn't writing code, but everything around that, which I think is super important. And today we have Colby. We're going to talk about his experience. We're going to talk about developer advocacy, a lot of content for enterprises, probably touch on AI, and then we usually don't have a plan. We just see where this goes. Well, I know I'm always excited to talk to Colby in that ways. So, Colby, over to you. We usually start with intros and just a bit of background and how you got here. So probably we start with that.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'm currently the director of developer experience engineering at Cloudinary, which is a image and video API. So it's kind of on the DevRel tree, but I mostly focus on code-oriented stuff. Before that, I was a UX and front-end engineer. So kind of what kind of got me into this career path is just deciding I wanted to start to teach stuff just to help make a bigger impact. And that teaching broadens, and I eventually got to where I am today.
Yeah. Wow. So you did some engineering previously and you wanted to teach.
Yeah. So to go into more specifics, so originally the project that got me kind of thinking about teaching was I was working on a satellite tasking dashboard for scientists, and uh, like going into that project, I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, I have to build a mapping application. That sounds super scary. But like once I started building it using Leaflet, if you're familiar, it wasn't that bad. And
Hmm.
I was thinking, other people probably have this misconception. And if
Hmm.
I can make a small impact by helping somebody else build a mapping app that maybe scientists will use, I can make a bigger
Yeah.
impact. So that's where the teaching kind of came in. But then I wanted to teach more in other stuff, not just be a mapping guy. And
Yeah.
then that's what kind of got me in the DevRel path where, you know, building content, helping people learn, and ultimately build
Wow.
awesome stuff. Yeah.
And how's it going with DevRel and like helping people and building cool stuff? Because I see you really build like really cool stuff.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's really rewarding being able to see what people are able to accomplish from some of the work that I've been able to do. So that's one of the biggest things for me. It's nice to see people become productive from that.
Yeah. I want to ask, how much time did you spend building your blog? Because
Building
it's
my
one of the
blog.
fancy, yeah, like your website. It's one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
fanciest I've seen, the Astrocoder one.
Man, I don't know how long it took me. Because what I did, I don't know if you've ever seen my Next.js WordPress starter. So it's a couple years old at this point, but I actually use that as the basis because I created that project as a way to easily spin up Next.js with WP GraphQL, which is the GraphQL interface for WordPress. And
Hmm.
using that as a starting point really took a lot of the work away from me. So um, I don't know. It's hard to tell because it's that kind of thing that you just keep working on slowly in the
Yeah.
background, time over time, whenever you have time. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's has that helped with your discoverability? Because I know a number of people have like portfolio websites, especially developer advocates. Some others don't; they don't care. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that has really helped you be discovered or helped like your brand personally?
I think so. And it's an interesting mix because like I have my Space Jelly as the
Yeah,
branding. So like I don't like put my name all over the place. I have my name as the author for each post. So I've never thought about, is that helping with my personal brand or just the Space Jelly brand? But I think it ultimately is because, I'm sharing it from my perspective. People on my newsletter, they're getting it and seeing that I
yeah,
wrote it. When I'm, talking to people and they want to see the content that I create, I'm able to share that with them. I do maintain my colbyfayock.com, but I just usually post non-tutorial content on there, which is rare. So
yeah,
I rarely post on that one.
yeah. Oh, so it's the Space Jelly brand then that's growing. Are you tracking
Yeah.
like traffic? and how
Yeah,
that's going.
I have analytics on it. And honestly, like I had a little bit of a slump last year because I just wasn't as consistent with doing articles for a while. So that kind of hit me a little bit. But this year I made it a goal to be better at, making sure I have an article for each video that I produce and all that stuff. And I've definitely seen an uptick and everything. And also shout out to Chris Sev. I did a redesign for my blog at one point, and I killed my time on page, and shout out to him
Yeah.
because he helped me give some tips on how I can improve that, which I did, and that also helped me
Oh,
recover a little bit because the redesign definitely put a little bit of a slump on the site, but it is
yeah.
what it is. I'm trying to recover from that still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can imagine Chris went through like a whole lot with Scotch back in the day.
Yes,
I think he
yes.
had like four redesigns, and each one will come with like some problem. And he'd
Yeah.
be like, I wish I didn't make this redesign. I
Right,
wish
right.
I didn't do this.
Man,
Probably has battle stories from those.
for sure. And like it's a challenging because like I was so excited about the redesign. I think it looks so much better and all that stuff. But that's a little bit of a bummer about launching that. But you do what you can, and ultimately I'm
Yeah.
doing it for fun and to help people out. So it's not like it's a critical
Yeah.
line for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Speaking of criticality, I know our website, the hackmamba.io website, I built it from a Gatsby sanity template back when you'd have to like deploy your own sanity instance.
Yeah.
And I've always like, I have the desire to move it to something like Astro or even Next.js, but I just don't want to mess things up. We have like traffic on
Yeah.
pages. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm, I'm going to leave this. If Gatsby goes extinct, I'll deploy like I'll just keep the fork that I have. So I do not update the packages. I update it maybe once a year. Like once a
Yeah.
year, I'm like, okay, I don't want to touch these things. I don't want to handle redirects on the pages if I maybe mess up the routes or any of that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good for business. It's working.
Right.
It will just stay that way. Yeah. So
I
it's
mean,
just there.
Netlify says that they're gonna keep supporting it at least from like um, I guess major security fixes and that stuff. Because I'm guessing there's a lot of enterprise customers still on it, so they kind of need to. But
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes. But yeah, good luck.
Yeah. 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 Every day I wake up, I'm like, oh, I hope today is not the day. I hear it.
Right.
It's going on there. Yeah. If it does, I'm just going to keep like a fork, like remove it from GitHub and
Right.
just
Right.
keep like just keep my version and keep it that way. Yeah. So we creating content. You mentioned like you create content for you write blog posts for videos that you
Yeah.
create. How's that going? How's that helping with like reach and education in general?
Yeah, so originally, like I primarily did both a video and an article for each piece of content, just as a way to provide different formats for people. Some people like to read,
Hmm.
some people like to watch the videos. I traditionally prefer articles. I'm getting a little bit more into YouTube, but people like to consume that content in different ways. So that's why I primarily did it. But the effect of it also allowed me to have um, a better footprint on SEO. So while Google certainly shows the videos in the SERP, having the article there is also helpful as well to try to get more traffic into that. And I have the video embedded at the top of the page, so hopefully it's also pulling in additional
Yeah.
traffic to the video as well. So trying to kind of have that cycle of
Hmm.
linking between the two properties.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, that's cool. So I've seen like a lot of tools, a lot of folks out there these days that they've realized video content is great because it's personal, but they want to have blog posts because of the SEO gains from that. So they use
Yeah,
AI for that. Is this
yeah.
something you've tried? I haven't tried it yet. I'm just thinking about it, but I'm still on the original content side, holding steadfast. But I want
Yeah.
to know if you've tried it out.
A little bit. I ended up not moving forward with it completely. I don't know. I'm so picky about my articles that I just have this need for it to be like written from me. And maybe one day we'll get to a point where I'll feel better about using it, or at least in a more productive way. But I'm not currently using it for either of the properties.
Yeah, that's that's cool. That's refreshing to hear that people like us still
Yeah.
holding steadfast.
I,
I've been optimistic. I've been looking, waiting for it. Like Chris Sev has video tap.
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
try it out. Because if it does, like I'm all up for the efficiency and the time saving, right? So I want to try that. I want to see it work. Like I
Yeah.
really want it to work because it could save us like a lot of time.
Yeah.
Transcribing this podcast, for instance, and making like a blog post that's meaningful out of it. But the problem is if it doesn't work, it's currently would like hurt.
Right.
you
Right.
know, yeah.
Well, I think it's like any AI tool. It can do a lot of cool stuff, but I think like making sure you have the review process in place. Because I know personally, the way
Mhm.
that I'm kind of seeing AI is I like it more from like an analysis perspective rather than a generative
Yeah.
perspective. While it
Mhm.
certainly can generate stuff, of course, like we see it, and it's going to keep getting better and better. Like I feel like it's more compelling about fitting into workflows and helping you become more productive with the work that you're already doing, as opposed to replacing the work that you're doing. That's just my 2 cents. That's where I found to see more of the compelling use cases, um, especially when you start to think about it at scale, because you
Yeah.
likely don't want somebody creating thousands of AI generated blog posts, right? But maybe you can have those thousands of posts that were written, reviewed, for grammar or something as part of somebody's workflow. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. From an analytical and research standpoint, I feel like AI can do that because it has more context, temporary context. Sometimes I can't remember stuff, right?
right, right.
But it could pass through all this content and pick out like similarities and you know common themes across all of them. Provide me with that information, and then I do with it whatever I please. So that definitely is something I see AI
Yeah.
helping out with.
And I know we wanted to
Yeah.
talk about media, so I'll bring that up for a second. So media like images and
Hmm.
videos, to the point
Hmm.
of like the analysis perspective. Like we have generative images, and I know generative videos coming along as well. But like some of the more compelling cloud ray features we have are like the moderation. So automatically
Yeah.
analyzing images and see if it's appropriate for user generated content, right? Or
Hmm.
doing things like automatically generating captions for an image. Like those are things that are going to
Hmm.
fit into your workflow and really make you more productive and efficient with the trying to
Yeah.
produce that content for the web or mobile apps.
Hmm. Yeah. So I do know, like, I've been a huge fan of Cloudinary for years, used it way back. I know Cloudinary has always had these same AI features, right? So now I'm trying to see what's changed,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's always been like image moderation, there's always
Hmm.
been image recognition. We've always had some sort of like semi-image generation with like neural style transfers. When you add like a lot of transformation on it, it looks like a new image, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was like, okay, they've existed, we've used them like over time. It's been in products in production. So
Hmm.
what has changed from that? Is it that LLMs became cool? Like they just became like new school. So
I think that's part of it. Like, I think it's like a
right?
big hype thing because, like, we certainly did have a lot of cool features. We've had auto tagging for a long time, for instance, which, and like content analysis generally. So, looking at an image or video,
Yeah.
seeing what's in that image and adding tags to that inside of your media library so you can make it searchable. Like, we've had that for a long time, but now with this kind of AI hype, it's about how we're marketing it a little bit differently, how we're pushing on it more. As a product, how can we take more advantage of it because it's getting to a point, the technology is getting to a point where we can come up with more use cases for it, where before we had a lot of cool stuff, but now we can see how much further we can push it to really increase people's productivity.
Yeah. I would I would with videos on Cloudinary, I would want to see more on like the analytics side of things. If you could throw on AI, this is feature request to anyone, product
Yeah, yeah.
managers listening. You could take it back. But I would love to see more like the analytics side of things with AI for videos. Um,
I know we
because
have
I've been
some
thinking
stuff
about
like
videos.
we at
Mhm.
least had like transcription, and we can get the highlights graph. So I don't know if you've ever been on, well, you've been on YouTube, but I don't know if you ever noticed at the bottom of the YouTube when you go over the timeline, sometimes it shows that graph of the highlights.
Mhm.
Like we can do that. We have the ability to create that highlights graph, and it uses AI to do that. So like that's one of the cool use cases that we have. And a feature that we've had for a while before the AI hype was also the automatic cropping. So
Yeah.
the example I love to use is a dog catching a frisbee across the screen. If you're going to
Yeah.
crop that to a portrait from a landscape, you want to be able to follow that dog. So being able to do that, it uses AI to detect where the subject is in the video and follow it along, which is super cool in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always been like the gravity tag, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
That's been there since like day one. And was it like was it AI underneath that? Maybe some traditional models. in the past, or was it like some, I don't know what algorithm managed like gravity tagging and those transformations? Did you use AI in the past for those?
That's my understanding. I don't know as much about the underlying models for that and how that works,
Hmm.
but my understanding is like we've been working on models like that for a while now. Is just really, become more prevalent in the community. There's a lot more open source models than there has ever been, so there's a lot more opportunity for playing around with new models and
Yeah.
pushing on it.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And
Yeah.
so you touched on marketing and positioning that's changed with, like, the hype with LLMs. What exactly has changed when it comes to like developer advocacy and seeing that, hey, we've always had these things, they've been great, they're working, but now we sort of have to change the messaging. How does that impact what you do and how
Yeah.
you have to like switch things around?
So I think it probably depends on, like, I'll talk about my how I'm personally handling it, but like I'm sure it depends on the person and the company. But um, the way that I'm trying to handle it is, I know like some people are starting to get turned off by AI. I personally am getting turned off by AI just because of the hype and like some everybody just throwing a chatbot on their website, and calling it a day.
Whitewashing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like my goal is to still talk about it, but talk about it in a compelling way. And that's why, like, for instance, talking about the analysis features are more compelling and actually trying to help people understand how this is going to help them become more productive, not just be like a little band-aid that they can throw on their website. Because there's a lot of really cool use cases that you can really take advantage of. It's just trying to uh, you know, escape from the fog, or whatever the expression is, to
Hmm.
kind of see
Yeah.
the actual compelling use cases amongst the
Hmm.
sea of chatbots, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely one way to go. But one thing is certain is, as working in a business, a company, would have to take advantage of the hype one way or
For
the other.
sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's given.
And like marketing
Mhm.
for sure is doing that. And of course I still think we need to be careful with how much we lean on it to
Yeah.
avoid people kind of getting turned off by it. But absolutely, making sure that we're able to showcase the features and why they're compelling and how we take advantage of that technology is important.
Yeah. And what role do developers play in all of these?
In like the marketing and product and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
in marketing. So I do know, like, previously we had like champions and folks that are like, very into, yeah, trying and cloudinary stuff. They've seen these features. How do you work to, would I say, like, reorient them or move them to this like new era of here advanced capabilities solving like more or different use cases, and they can in turn, champion that? Or how does this also affect the content you create for developers and
yeah.
developers in teams that you sell to?
So I think there's kind of two angles that I'm interested in, and so like the first one being that some people are just scared that they're going to lose their job at this. So talking to
Yeah.
people and figuring out ways to make them feel more comfortable and more empowered by it, because that's how I see it. I don't see any job replacements coming in the near future, at least in a massive way that's going to be a good
Hmm.
thing for the company. So it's like, how can we encourage people to take advantage of the technology to make them more productive, to boost their ability to build awesome stuff um, without being scared about it. From the other angle, the people who are already comfortable with it, because there's so many AI solutions or AI stuff in the market, how can we kind of like shine our light through that and show them why ours is compelling, why it's going to help them, which isn't as easy. Sometimes you have to
Hmm.
show them, they have to see the magic to understand how compelling it is, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just working with a still image or something, being able to have
Yeah.
video content, which is increasingly important for people to discover, or giving a talk. And some of the features that I've been able to show giving a talk, really helps opens people's eyes. And, that's when you get the, wow,
Hmm.
you can do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
By showing somebody right in front of them that I can expand an image using generative fill, which is a little prop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that does make sense. So take it, I would say, like, one step back from this being like vendor agnostic. So no cloudinary. This is from a developer advocate to some random founder out there, because we have a number of founders that listen to this. How would they go about when I say talking to developers about their AI product, obviously it's probably like developer first, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of founders struggle with that, right? They build cool tools, but this is developer first, and we know that the current AI hype is with, if it isn't like OpenAI or any of the video um, providers or voice providers, you're just lost trying to find like footing, right?
Yeah.
So what would be your go-to strategy? What should they try first when, if they want to talk to developers about their AI products? That's developer first.
So I think developers, like broadly, and of course, this isn't everybody, but I think developers in a broad sense are really good at seeing through BS. And
Yeah.
that's something that we've seen companies have issues with before, because they try to overhype or overmarket. Like we've seen some of these AI tools, that I won't mention names, where they create this whole story, and then we find out that it's pretty much fake, and that completely ruins their credibility instantly, because
Hmm.
it wasn't real at all. So, being able to, in my opinion, when you're talking about strict to developers, it's being able to show those use cases and really show, why this is going to help them become more productive, how it's going to help their customers succeed more, where you can start to then tie that to, how that's going to make them money, for instance, is important.
Hmm.
And doing it in a, you can fluff it up a little bit, but in a way that's going to be honest and transparent for people.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely does make sense. And then I started thinking about what medium should they go at. And I've had this question more recently from founders reach out to me and they're like, hey, we want to invest in content. But
Hmm.
it seems like everyone is going with videos, and they go with videos and mostly like video media, podcast streams, not podcasts, but streams, individual content on YouTube, TikTok, shorts. But at
Yeah.
the same time, the business somewhat favors like SEO and written content, right? So they're conflicted on what works, especially for developers. So what do you think works as a developer advocate?
Yeah, like I'd like to say a mix. I don't think that's, the kind of answer that you want, and like I'll kind of expand on that. So, I think articles, blog posts are really great from a more like a long like the longer game and like SEO, because I don't think that they're usually not going to be as like immediately splashy, where once it gets picked up on the engines, like that's where you're going to start to get the traffic and more people taking a look at it, as opposed to video, where like the platforms like YouTube, like most of the times when you're working with influencers, like you're trying to get that big splash out the door, and that's where you're going to see a lot of that success. And I don't know, we like to try to play a balance with that. So like we produce some
Hmm.
videos in house, for like our YouTube. I've also been trying to support content creators creating sponsored content for Cloudinary, with a lot of good success. We usually try to go towards use case driven content. The influencers are good at what they do, but ultimately we also like to make sure that it's use case driven, as opposed to just some kind of like hype video, which I think
Yeah.
really helps. It really helps showcase the product and how it's going to fit into a developer's life cycle. I think that's really
Yeah.
important. We're into their workflow rather. Um, so I think having a mix of the two is important, because they kind of have two different goals as to what is really successful for them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely use case driven. I think that's like the go-to for anyone
Yeah,
building anything, because you want to immediately show a transformation. You want to show like value. And if
yeah,
nothing, like that's something you want to show right off the bat, at least what differentiates you from others.
for
So
sure.
yeah, definitely that's something to think about. And SEO, I say to everyone, you have to wait like 6 to 9 months.
Yeah,
Like if you're being
it's a waiting game.
realistic, right? Yeah, it's a waiting game. Yeah. And as you're pushing out content, there are like others in the same market, like the same niche, doing the same domain, pushing out similar content, because the data on what to rank for, what keywords everyone is going at is publicly available. Use SEMrush or Ahrefs,
Yeah,
and you can see that, and everyone is going for the same
so it's super
the
competitive.
same keywords. Yeah, it is. It's super competitive as well. So definitely, the videos are the way to go. And aside, focusing on like use cases, what would you say, if you can share? What would you say has also been a deciding factor to working with influencers, right? To you know create content. What
Yeah.
has been like the thing that's made it successful?
So another thing that's beneficial about working with some of the different creators is we're also able to kind of tap into their audience, not in a negative way, but there's we want to ultimately reach more people. We want to reach people who haven't heard about Cloudinary before, or given whatever the product is you're trying to market. So being able to tap into the different creators gives us an opportunity to put them in front of those people. Our hope is that we're going to do it in a way. Well, we make sure we do it in a way that is going to
Hmm.
be beneficial to them, because we don't want people just going out and shilling the product. We want to actually work with people who find the use cases compelling, that can implement into a workflow that's going to help their audience become more productive. So that's kind of what we've been trying to do as we've been working with different influencers.
Yeah. Do you look at like their audience demography? Are there like some business considerations to it?
Currently, what we really just look for is that's the more so like the languages and frameworks that they're working on, because if they
Hmm.
have if that's kind of like the core tools that they're working with, and their audience seems to be really captured by that, we're that's where we kind of see that we're going to be able to support them with doing something with Cloudinary. So we don't really look too much into the demographics of it. One kind of interesting point of that is, some channels might be more for intro for for beginners, like introduction content, versus someone who might be having more advanced content. But I think that there's it's important to be able to support all those different levels of comfortability with code. Students
Hmm.
from a business perspective, we're supporting them, not only supporting them, but we're playing the more of a long-term game there, where the hope is that once they learn how to use Cloudinary, take advantage of the
Hmm.
generous free tier to accomplish something
Hmm.
that maybe in the future that they're going to find an awesome job somewhere and be able to use that as a tool or suggest it or some other use case in the future. But
Yeah.
more when you think about the more advanced use cases, people understand the problems more at scale, that why Cloudinary is going to solve that as opposed to a different solution, which is another
Yeah.
challenge. Trying to talk on Cloudinary becomes more compelling at scale, so trying to make
Yeah.
sure that you're able to juggle talking about use cases that developers are going to actually understand, because they haven't necessarily hit that problem before.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. And this sounds like a bit of investment in developers because you're not entirely sure of what conversion looks like, right? Who's going
For
to
sure.
take it on and when they're going to come and try Cloudinary, if at all they're going to try, but at least they have something in their minds that says, hey, this tool could solve this problem.
For sure. And yeah, it's certainly a bet. I think that's kind of some of the core of DevRel, is that we are making bets that um, by supporting the community, by showing it in compelling use case driven content, that they will use it in the future. Because a lot of
Hmm.
times, like an individual developer that watches a video that uses it for their personal blog, they're not going to be our main customer, or they're not going to be our biggest customer, right? Usually those
Yeah.
people are working somewhere where they might suggest it as a tool. So that's really going to be where like the enterprise customers come in, right? So
Yeah.
that can become hard to track. Like we really don't have the ability to track an individual signing up for a personal blog and then using it in an enterprise. So, um,
Hmm.
but the way that we see it is that by supporting them, we're going to ultimately see that kind of conversion into the enterprise in the future.
Yeah. And I think that brings me to like one of the reasons we got on this stream, which is, and something I like to say is, I haven't paid for Cloudinary. I can only say that I haven't paid for Cloudinary yet. I think I got like a pro plan sometime in the past for just being, everywhere around it. So I haven't
Yeah.
used Cloud. I haven't paid for Cloudinary, and I haven't paid for Sanity, right?
Right.
But there are a lot of tools that like Cloudinary and Sanity that I would gladly pay for any other day because of how valuable it's been to me and to
Hmm.
my business. And as a developer, I've sold it into teams. I
Yeah.
I sold like Sanity into like the engineering team at currently Unicorn here in Norway, right? And it was just because I love Sanity
Yeah.
and I love Cloudinary and so many other tools like that. But I was just a developer,
Yeah.
right? And like no salesperson would talk to me. But I see a number of teams neglect this factor that developers can be champions in buying decisions in teams, right? And
Yes.
sometimes there isn't like justification for it, right? Because the CFO is looking for hard numbers and facts, but there isn't like, hey, here are the numbers. If we reach out to these developers, they will in turn help us close X number of deals. But we just know it's there. So
Yeah.
I want to get your take on this scenario in general.
You know, and I think that was a perfect way of describing it, like making people champions of the product, because the more we can see you successful in your endeavors, the more likely that you are to share it with your friends, share it with other companies, exactly like what you said. But from a perspective of gauging success, when we're sponsoring content, when we're sponsoring YouTube videos, it's certainly challenging, and we don't really have a perfect way of being able to measure that. People are usually generous enough to put links, like short links in their description, but barely anybody clicks links in a description, let alone a short link for a company. So like,
Yeah.
it's a small percentage of people who watch that video who are going to see that in the first place. We still get some clicks, but it's, not a lot. And on the other hand, from that, like the only metric we have to go off then is views, and views is a terrible metric to go off of,
Yeah, it's
but it's
arbitrary.
what we
Yeah.
have. So what we
Yeah.
try to do, and I don't know if you remember Balaj, like he helped put together a model for this, but trying to put a relative a dollar value on those views. And again, it's not perfect, but it's what we have. But then what we can do is we can use that uh relative to the other videos that we produce, so that we can see which ones have been more successful. Is this becoming more successful over time as we're spending more money on sponsoring, or
Mhm.
if relative to in the past, is it starting to go downhill, and those kind of things. So I think it's important to kind of see how the different impacts of the videos have relative to each other, which is going to help us have more insight into who we sponsor, where we sponsor, those kind of things,
Mhm.
to ultimately drive more long-term usage.
Yeah. Recently, I've seen like a lot of teams. What they say is we don't know how beneficial sponsoring like a video or a creator is, because we don't get the numbers, but we do know we see a spike in signups on the day the video goes live,
Yeah.
and that's the only metric they have.
Right. Yeah, it's hard, and I think that's going to be like I think that's going to be more visible for smaller startups, like a company like
Hmm.
Cloudray. The amount of signups that we get daily, it's hard to see any sort of significant bump from like a single video. So that's hard, unless it's a huge video, a huge creator. So it becomes a little bit more challenging in that angle. So we don't really try, like we'll look and see if it's a huge creator, we'll look and see if we got a little bump. And it's also really hard to correlate, because it can be any number of things. Having a customer base all over the world, doing events day to day, it could be anything, right? So it's, while
Yeah.
it's cool to see, it's hard to correlate and actually translate to dollar value, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's hard to correlate, and like you said, for small teams, it's probably like easier when you have very few signups each day, and content goes out somewhere, and you see like extra 10, 20, 30% spike. You just know, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just know definitely that's it. So I've seen also more recently. I mean, with the economic crunch and like layoffs and people like letting go of teams, they see developer enablement as disposable. It's like, yeah, we can just kick them out. In fact, we'll close off developers. We're not going to support them. Let's go enterprise first, right? We stick to enterprise first. But then I've also seen a retracement. Some of them are going back to how it was. It's like, okay, we actually need to be careful developers now, right? Why do you think they make that decision in the first place? Like being in an enterprise organization as well. Why do you think that happens?
I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons, depending on the company, but I get a sense that a lot of teams that are suffering from this, the organization might not have really known how to do DevRel in the first place. Because a lot of times you'll see companies come in and they'll just toss as much money as they can, thinking the more money we're spending, the more money we're dropping in
Yeah.
events, the more of a return. And that's just not how it is. Like a lot of these DevRel teams are going kind of unchecked, not being able to associate any kind of dollar value to the work that they were doing. And that was cool having a blank check for a while, and I think a lot of people got upset because they no longer had
Mm.
that blank check, the people who are saying
Yeah.
DevRel is dead. But I think it's more so just getting to reality and needing to be able to put that dollar value to show that the work you are doing is actually, moving the needle and helping people become more productive and, getting customers for the company. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think getting to reality, that's important,
yeah,
right? Because in previous reality, I think most of what we did in DevRel wasn't tied to the business, or it was, but wasn't closely tied to the business.
yeah.
Um,
And while I
DevRel,
certainly do think all
mhm,
those things are
yeah,
important, like sponsoring events is important, being able to have a presence at an event, being
mhm,
realistic about how much money you're dropping at those events and all the after parties and stuff is important.
yeah, yeah, definitely important. Um, so where do you think now? This is me asking for your opinion. Where do you think DevRel teams should sit? Should they be should they sit closer to the product team? Should they sit independently of like anyone else, or should they sit close to the business teams, which drives or funds most of the activities?
I definitely think that they should be on the product or engineering team, like that product engineering lane. I think ultimately our goal is to be the developer voice and bring that
Hmm.
feedback back to the product team, help make it as easy as possible for people to work with it, improve feature requests, working on bugs. And I think having that closer line of communication with the team, especially like if you, um, have good communication within that inner team is important in helping to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's also like the same opinion I share because it's developer advocate. It's not product advocate or business advocate. Or in the past,
Exactly.
you'd have like rainmakers and folks that are like advocates on, but they're more on the business side of things, right? Um,
Yeah. It's not always
something
the
I've been
case.
thinking of. Yeah,
It's not always
yeah,
the
go on.
case, but like often when you have the team sitting under marketing, the goals start to conflict because
Yeah.
marketing approach to um, you know gaining developers is different from the DevRel perspective, right? Where marketing is product first, we're developer first. So those are very conflicting views. So when you start to have that marketing influence on the DevRel team, you start to get
Mhm.
closer to that marketing mindset, which really kind of starts to dilute the impact that you can have as a team.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What I think about is sitting closer to the product team. That's the CFO to answer to, right? The CFO to fund like the DevRel initiatives. How
Right,
do you
right.
convince them, right? And the CFO sits with the marketing team and the sales team and whoever is in charge of revenue officers, and they're always looking at like numbers and dollar signs. And there's the product team coming to demand quite like a bit of share, especially if it's a developer first product demanding like, hey, we need to like do these things and they will cost us money, right? How do
Yeah.
you feel teams, DevRel teams should, as a director of DevRel, how do you even like do that? How do you navigate that choppy water of, you know, getting that approval or getting like someone like the CFO to say, yeah, definitely take my
Yeah,
money.
so that is a challenge, and it really depends on what the situation is. But ultimately, being able to tie the work that you're doing or the work that we're requesting somebody to do on behalf of the developer community, you need to be able to tie that dollar value. Like, what kind of impact is it going to have? I can think of a number
Yeah.
of things that we've tried to advocate for in the past, and just saying off of my you know I think that this would be better in this way. That's not going to convince the team to drop what they're doing and invest all their time and money into doing that. But being
Mhm.
able to start to look at the bigger picture and how it fits in, how much money that's going to cost to implement, and what potential revenue we can bring in from making those changes can be critical
Mhm.
in you get that work done.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like showing, some sort of business value, that's important because, you're still an organization. If the organization goes under, everyone would be out of a job.
Yeah.
So you need to make money in one way, in one way, in one way or the other.
Yeah. And
Um,
if you think about it, like they have their priorities. We also have priorities coming in from customers. So you're not
mhm.
only fighting to get it prioritized, you're fighting with other people to get it prioritized above their stuff that have really compelling reasons as to why their work
Yeah.
should be compelling. So the more you can make your case, including that dollar value, the better chance that you'll have to get that,
Yeah.
approved and worked on.
Yeah. That's definitely something a lot of like developer relations leaders miss is knowing that, hey, the same person you're going to for like budget has like so many other teams coming to them
Right.
for the same budget, and they have like strong cases, and everyone's trying to
Yeah.
make a stronger case for a finite amount of dollars.
Yeah. And it can certainly be frustrating, because I know there's been a lot of cases in my mind. It's so picture clear. If we do
Mhm.
this thing, like it's so obvious, but it's not obvious for them. And it might not even be the case that relative to the other thing that is super obvious isn't going to drive more revenue. So being able to have
Mhm.
that bigger picture is certainly important.
Yeah, it's definitely important. And then this brings me to something that I usually think about: influence, right? How much
Yeah.
influence do you feel developer relations teams should have? Do you feel like we should have, especially for a developer first product, do you feel like you should have someone, a developer relations leader, sit? How high up, right, should they sit and be able to like call the shots?
So I won't use the word call the shots, but I do think that the team should really have a lot of influence throughout the product life cycle. The reason
Hmm.
why is I think a lot of times engineering teams are kind of, in a little bit of a bubble with the work that they're doing. They become experts in what they're doing for that specific use case. And then they start to miss the bigger picture as to how other people are trying to use it. They might not care about those little technical details that you care about for the implementation. They just care about how to get their work done for their particular use case. So things like terminology might be completely different. Things like the syntax that you're using might be completely different for how somebody might find it easier when they're working in their particular stack. So I think being
Hmm.
able to have people like the DevRel team, developer advocates, being able to bring that developer voice in, being able to have more insights into how the community's feeling, best practices as they change, because they've changed drastically within the last couple of years. Developer experience is like
Yeah.
so high. The bar for it is so high than it was just a couple of years ago. So being able to bring that back to the team and make sure that, from the start that we're thinking about these things rather than at the tail end to have the last, thoughts before go ahead, is important to making sure that everybody's efficient. We can and actually build stuff that developers love and want to use.
Yeah, definitely. This is like, I've seen teams that also believe in this. They believe that developer relations team should, be able to influence product development. I mean, an arm of DevRel is product. There's product, community, and content. So that's product, and they should be able to do this. But the practicalities of it is just super tough. Again, they start to think about what's the first thing they should do. Should they sit with the product manager? Should they have like a product manager that's in charge of developer experience, that works with developers? Or like, how do they go about making this shift? Because they know they want to make the shift, but it's just too difficult. And allocating resources to this would mean either they do this internally, they have to find time. If they're a small team, they're moving super fast, they cannot find time for this. If they're a larger team, they want to outsource this and get consultants to come help them make that change. And everyone really doesn't like consultants because they come in with like they don't see like the picture, or they don't have history
Right.
and context as much. So what would you say is a way to, for teams that are looking to make this sort of like transition? They want to bring DevRel close because they know it's great for like product growth and ultimately would impact the product vision.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts in mind that we've started to do internally that's been, very helpful. And, the goal's not to get in anybody's way. Of course, we're not here to become another roadblock. The goal's to help you succeed, right? Or that person implementing the
Mhm.
feature to succeed. So one way that we've been doing it is the team, the product manager, and like the UX designers will show me some designs and walk through the user flow and what they're trying to do, and just simply ask for feedback on it so I can give my take. I can think about what might be and what might not be intuitive from a developer perspective or just generally a user's perspective, so that they can have that developer perspective when they're working through it, because the designers might not be developers. They don't have that empathy or understanding of how somebody might actually use it as a developer. So having that perspective is important. Another way is from more of an engineering perspective. Once you get to to that level, having more diagrams and documentation before going into the project. Those are things that for at least the larger teams you're already doing and you're sharing amongst your engineering team. So why not share it with the developer experience or DevRel team as well, so that they can pull in their insights and give feedback just like the rest of the team is doing. We've been doing that and have been able to do things like think about what terminology we're using for endpoints, or what kind of shapes that they should be, or different language SDK syntax and those kind of things. Being able to help provide that valuable feedback before they build it. So rather than just dropping and saying, "Hey, we built this API, give us feedback," which then at that point it's
Yeah.
like we can only kind of consider it as a bug, I guess. Which who knows if that gets prioritized. But saving everybody time and ultimately building something greater by being able to provide that feedback in the beginning can really help out a lot.
Yeah, definitely. That would like that's definitely two ways. I think that's three ways even
Oh,
to go about it. Yeah, that was definitely great. I'm sure
yeah.
anyone else listening out there, looking for how to bring in the DevRel team closer. I think thinking about it first, that's 50% of the problem solved, and then they take these tips, they would get all the way
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, I see we're coming up on time. Thank you so much, Colby,
Yeah,
for
man.
coming on the stream today. If anyone wants to find your amazing website, I have it here. It's spacejelly.dev, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The SG.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So you can find me
Is it
anywhere
Twitter?
at Colby Fayock. Yeah, Twitter, YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Any last words before we call this a wonderful rest of the day? There's a sun here. I need to go see what it's about.
Yeah.
We
Don't
don't get
sleep
that
on your
all the
DevRel
time.
team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Don't sleep on your
Yep.
DevRel team. Maybe with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Do not sleep on your DevRel team, man. Caption for today. Anyways, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Colby. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a like somewhere down here. I still don't know how this works. I'm learning, trying to be like Colby when I grow up,
You got to learn which direction to point.
which direction it is. Yeah, but have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks.